recording of the class. Welcome back to Cross-Cultural Communications. I'm Professor Sean Watts. We're starting today making sure we understand how to communicate with other cultures. In this class, we've identified you can go through your mind map. You write down your personality, your characteristics. They will identify a job or a career that matches you. They're pretty basic. Or even better, you can identify the Jung typology profiler, which is in the humanmetrics.com or www.16personalities.com. Both of those websites, humanmetrics.com or 16personalities.com, they will identify your personality, they will identify your characteristics, they will identify a career or a job that matches you. There's generally 16 different types of personalities. And they will also identify what is the best way that you communicate and how, if it's different than other people, how you can change your communication to better connect with people. Same thing, how you can learn better with other people. So make sure you're aware of those details. We've talked about that. Is that clear, Rosie?
Yeah, it is. Thank you.
Okay. So that whole process of learning about yourself, that's called enculturalization, enculturation. And the idea of learning about another culture after you know who you are, then it's okay to start studying others. That's the acculturalization, acculturation. And then there's many types of cultures, many types of groups. Be aware of those details. We've talked about the idea of just simple communications can have a very drastic miscommunication. We used this simple business sentence where somebody from the United States asked somebody in a different community, can you please tell me your head count in the factory broken down by sex? And the person thought they were talking about guy and girl intercourse, making baby sex, not talking about gender sex. So words that have different meanings can have a huge difference and impact your management and your cross-cultural communication. So be aware of those details. There's lots of information related to the communication with the cultures. We also had definitions of many things, definitions of a melting pot society versus, while this is in United States, Canada is in the different type of culture. Anybody remember what is the Canadian culture? If it's not a melting pot, it doesn't make every culture become one in Canada. What is it called in Canada and other cultures? In Korea, it's also a melting pot. It promotes only one culture. What is the alternative? Jihang. Do you know what is the opposite of like the Korean melting pot? Korea tries to make everybody one culture. United States makes everybody one culture. Canada is different. Canada is called what? Do you remember? Okay, good enough. Simple idea is it's the multicultural society. So it just promotes the multiculturalism. Just be aware that you should be accepting other cultures. And at the same time, don't point them out as different. Don't point them out as foreigners. The idea of the word foreigner, many people might say that is an insult. That's like saying a black person or a Negro person or an Eskimo person. Eskimo is a bad word. It means the eater, like a savage eater of raw meat. The polite word is the people of the land. So identify other people, try to communicate with other people, but don't treat them differently. If you're not going to walk up to Korean people and start asking them many, many questions, be aware of the same thing with the non-Koreans or the international society. So we talked about world culture, globalization, the idea of the difference between globalization, localization, globalization. This hard word is talking about how it's bad. Big organizations push their culture on other places, like United Kingdom, like England. When England took over and went into India, they made all of India follow the English style. That's very bad. Be aware of that. That's the global, it's like the robber globalization. Remember that. So the definition of culture. What is culture?
Professor,
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but could you please give me an example of the globalization?
Globalization, sure. That just means you go around the world. So you go globally, like Coca-Cola goes globally or Hyundai goes globally. You know, companies go globally, but at the same time, when you are in a different country, you try to act like a local. So Coca-Cola, when they're in Korea, maybe they sell a kimchi Coca-Cola in Korea. That's definitely a Korean thing. They're trying to have the Korean local taste. And Hyundai, when they go to, I don't know, maybe Sweden, where they're focused on super safe car culture, maybe the Hyundai car promotes the fact that they are trying to be the safest car in the world. So it's a global company, but it is acting locally. Maybe it's using the local language, using things that the locals care about, not just what is popular in their head office. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Now, can you do me a favor? I'm going to tell you dimensions of culture. Our textbook says that there's at least 3 different one more time. English is so difficult, right? The textbook talks about there's 3 different dimensions of culture as a minimum. So there's language dimension of culture, there's the physical dimension of culture, and the psychological dimension of culture. Can you guess what is another way to identify culture? Who was just talking last? Can anybody in class identify other ways of culture, identifying culture? Im Min Gyu or Maria Santos, can you guys talk to me about different other dimensions of culture? Physical dimension, language dimension, psychological dimension. What are some other ways to analyze culture? Maria Santos, any comments?
No, I'm trying to think about one, but I don't know.
Hint, hint, hint. Hint, hint, hint. Pay attention to your screen. Maria, can you read what is on the computer screen? What's just the top line here?
It says power distance.
And keep reading.
The extent to which the less powerful members of organizations and institutions accept and expect that power is distributed unequally.
Right. Kim Min Jung, do you understand what is power distance?
Yes, I think in the like Asia or Eastern culture, the power distance is more stronger than the Western culture. Is it right?
Absolutely. Can you guess which country has the lowest power distance? And the same sentence is, which country is the most equal? Any idea where in the world? Is it in South America, Southern Africa? Is it in Asia, North America, Europe, Scandinavia? Any idea where is the most equality? Scandinavia.
Maybe somewhere in Northern Europe. I don't know.
Yes, Scandinavia, yes. Norway, Finland, Sweden, those countries have the lowest level of power distance. If you guys are interested, I can bring a very famous professor from Scandinavia, from like Norway and Denmark. He can come and talk to our class. And you're going to see, even though he teaches this topic, that you may have a challenge relating to him, because he literally thinks you are all the same as him. So when he asks a question, if you don't answer it, he just keeps talking. He thinks you don't care, even if you do care. Versus me, I know maybe European students, they will talk. Maybe Uzbekistani students, they will talk some, but maybe a little bit less. People from Korea or maybe Mongolia and Japan, those students will talk much less until I yell your name. Understand? But a professor from Denmark won't accept that you're different. He doesn't accept that the Korean people must have me say, you answer the question. Does that make sense? Would you guys, if you guys are interested in me bringing in extra visitors, let me know, or let the teaching team know. What about Jules Fournier? Can you tell me another way that culture can be analyzed? Or in other words, what is another cultural dimension similar to you yourself, different than the group?
Collectivism versus individualism.
Great. What does that mean?
The degree to which individuals are supposed to look after themselves or remain integrated into groups, usually around the family. 0
Right.
individual and 104 collective.
Right. So that what I mean by that is when I talk to French people or European people or North American people or many people in India, if I ask a question to the group, if I ask a question to everybody, people in India will just yell out their answer. But in Korea, most people will say nothing. They will only speak if everybody has to do it together, or they will only speak if I say your name. Very few people will do anything as an individual, right? Wan Ki and Yi Ji-yang and Kyung Gon Jung and Im Min Yu, all Korean students, please promise me in our class every day, try to talk to me about something. Try to talk to the class about something. Try to get over your natural focus on just working with the group and try to start working as an individual. Can you guys promise me that? Kyung Gon Jung and all other classmates from Korea and Asia?
Yes.
Okay. Kyung Gon Jung, can you tell me which dimension is maybe most special about Korea? Which one is very, very noticeable about Koreans?
I think career orientation.
Okay. What that's talking about is some people are very focused on relationships and other people are very focused on their careers and getting a job promotion. Okay, maybe. Can you guess of another?
Uncertainty avoidance.
Yes. And what does that mean? Can you read that definition, please?
The extent to which a culture programs its members to feel either uncomfortable or comfortable in unstructured situations.
Right. Try to get over that. And this is an example of showing it. I encourage all of you to search the internet for Gert Hofstede or just Hofstede and just say Hofstede cultural difference or Hofstede in Korea or Hofstede in China or Hofstede in France. And it will show you this type of information. You can compare 4 different countries and it will tell you how the countries are different. So who wants a test? Anybody want to volunteer? I'm going to ask you, how is China different than Korea, different than Japan, different than USA or Canada or Denmark? So I want to know, how is Korea, let's focus on the red, how is Korea different than any of these other countries? Give me an example. Give me one sentence to describe Korea without using, you're not allowed to use the word kimchi. You need to use either power distance or individualism and collectivism, or masculinity, which is career aggressiveness versus relationship, or uncertainty avoidance. Anybody want to try to describe Korea compared to these other countries? Any volunteers? Anybody with low uncertainty avoidance?
I believe it's not very big difference, but I believe Korea is maybe middle of China and Japan. Not very collective, and but I'm not sure. In this chart, Korea has the lowest individuality, but I believe Korea is middle of individuality, and maybe in also part middle of China and Japan.
So Korea here is red.
Yeah.
And with individualism, what you're talking about, you're
I
saying
know.
Korea is more collectivist than China, and more collectivist, much more collectivist than Japan. Japan is much more individualistic, I believe. And even China is more individualistic. And if we go over here, this area, USA, Canada, and Denmark, they're almost off the charts. They're almost maximum. And Korea is at the lowest level. That means Koreans, what? What does it mean? How are you? You are different with numbers. What does that mean when you meet somebody, or you talk to somebody, or you work?
That means individual want to join in the group and be a part in the group, less individuality.
Right. And it also means you're afraid to talk alone. So thank you, Jung Min Jin. You're awesome. You are becoming much more of a cross-cultural communication specialist than almost any other Korean participants in class. And since I asked the whole class, you're more of a cross-cultural specialist than anybody else in the class so far. Congratulations. Anybody else? What is another way that Korea is different? Anybody?
Uncertainty.
Sorry. Oh, I'm very bad. I'm such a bad guy. I'm never supposed to laugh at somebody when they're trying. But when we were talking about culture, one way to describe culture, Koreans use one word. That means high context culture. You describe many details with one word, like pegopa. And Koreans understand exactly what you mean when somebody says pegopa. But in English, if you just say pegopa, like hunger, a Canadian person will say, what do you mean? How do you spell hunger? Are you hungry? Am I hungry? What do you mean? We don't understand. So you just said one word, which is nice. And I understand what you're talking about. But any other Western person, any other person from a different cultural background, they might not understand you because you only said one word. You need to use more words. Please say your answer again with more words. Somebody just said one word before I was very rude and I laughed. Who was that? Was that
It was me, sir. I'm sorry about that.
Moon Taekyun? Yes. Can you use more than one word?
So as I see this graph, a lot of Korean people afraid of just, uncertain words, uncertain answers. So yeah, compared to US, Canada, and Denmark.
Yes, absolutely. So for the uncertainty avoidance, the red here, Korea is almost at the top of the chart. Yes. But for the uncertainty avoidance over here, these other cultures, which culture will try things the most? Which culture is most accepting of something new? Perhaps more entrepreneurial than Korea. Which is the most on this sheet?
Denmark?
Yes, Denmark has the lowest uncertainty avoidance. Great, thank you. Do you want to try one more? So we talked about individualism. We talked about uncertainty avoidance. What about power distance? That's harder to understand. Gwen, can you tell me how Korea relates to other cultures with power distance?
So compared to like the ones on the right, like US, Canada, Denmark, South Korea is pretty higher, but if you compare it to the ones on the left, they're like right in the middle.
Okay, so what does that mean? This is research, but what does regular speak?
Well, if you compare it to the ones on the right again, so their power distance. So it's like, how do I explain?
Ah, it's harder, isn't it?
Yes, hold on, let me try though. I'm trying. It's like they see the people above them like with more authority than we do, but I guess not as much as like they do in China, but then like a little more than in Japan.
Absolutely. So all of these countries, they accept society is not equal. They accept the powerful people are different than regular workers in Korea. And they are more accepting that powerful people are more different than in Japan. But in China, even China is even more accepting. The powerful people are much, much more different. And the Chinese people accept it, and they expect the top government people are more powerful than the lower levels. But which country is the opposite? Which country is different? Use the English sentence to describe that. Can you talk about that, Gwen? Which country has the lowest power distance, and what does that mean?
Well, in the graphs here, Denmark has the lowest power distance. And so even if someone has like a technically higher authority, like their boss or something, they still see them like, I guess, on the same level as them.
Absolutely. If you're interested, I can show you photos of Denmark. Denmark used to have a king, and the king actually is taking the public bus to go back and forth from his home to work. Do you think the president of Korea takes the public bus, or the president of China, or even the president of USA? Do you think they take a regular bus to go back and forth to work? In Denmark, they do, because the Denmark president or the Denmark king considers himself equal to everyone else. So if you're interested, I can show you an example of that. If there's any questions, please let me know. And so we are talking here, power distance, individualism, masculinity, uncertainty avoidance. Masculinity is not talking about penises and vaginas. It's not just talking about a guy and girl. What exactly is this talking about? Again, a Canadian researcher gave different words for this. Does anybody know what is a different word for masculine in this research?
In this research, I think that they are talking about the idea of an entrepreneur to push for goals, maybe.
Similar, they're talking about career orientation. Yes, so masculinity is judging how focused and aggressive they are for career, for getting a new job, getting a job promotion.
Okay.
And the opposite of masculine is feminine, and it doesn't mean vagina. Feminine means they're relationship focused more. They want to keep the department or the company happy more than pushing somebody out of the way to get a promotion. Great. And here, that's all just from one person. That's all from one researcher that was called Gert Hofstede. Go to Google, type in Hofstede and any country in the world, and you will see that. This is a bigger story. It was a better story, but it wasn't promoted as much. So this story is called The Globe, And their core cultural dimensions is power distance, we just talked about. Social relationships, we talked about. Individual collectivist. We also talked about uncertainty type information, but there's more to it than what we just said. But there's new factors in this globe study. They're talking about time patterns and monochronic versus polychronic. How? What does this mean? Can you guess? How is one country time focused versus other countries are different? So when I grew up, feel free, start speaking as soon as you can. Otherwise, I'm just going to wait for anybody in class to say. When I was a child, I used to watch cartoons and movies about spaceships and like the Jetsons. Young little guys would get in a spaceship and fly to other planets and just go to work with robots and spaceships. But in China, what do a lot of the young people usually watch for cartoons? Are they thinking of the future, like in Canada, or are they thinking of something else? Anybody know? Any Chinese people here, or anybody study China? Going once, twice. The opposite of future-oriented culture is the past-oriented culture, or it could be the present-oriented culture. In China, they watch a lot of cartoons from ancient times, like the Monkey King is, I think, hundreds or thousands of years ago, how you deal with things because of history. And China is still largely impacted because of that. They do things, they decide their government laws, they decide their company policies, not just based off of what they might have in the future, but based off of what they did in the past. So they're forward thinking versus past thinking. That's another type.
Professor?
Yes.
Are you saying that China is kind of conservative?
No,
No?
I'm not saying conservative, but you could identify China as conservative from this. If the uncertainty avoidance for blue is very high, it's they are more conservative. This means they're kind of conservative. But over here, when I'm talking about time, I'm talking about they just simply think about things in the past versus other countries think about things in the future. Like in Canada and United States, our popular cartoons are Superman. Superman is nothing from the past. Superman is something coming from the future. And rocket ships and those cartoons with the future, that's because we're thinking of the future. Even when we manage a company, we say our company is being managed for our 20-year future goals. That's what they usually say. So that's what we mean when they're talking about the future. But in China, it's growing faster. It's just they're not basing their decisions off of the future. They're basing their decisions off of what they learned in the past. Like 1,000 years ago, we learned these things. So we have to learn from these things to have a stronger future. Understand? We are deciding things, we're thinking about things based off of what we learned before, versus in Canada, we're just, I don't know, joking or guessing. Let's try this in the future. Let's try this. We're just forward thinking. It's not really conservative. That's a different thing. Does that answer your question?
Yep. Thanks.
Okay. And environment. The last circle down here. Anybody want to guess what this means? How can a culture be different than some other culture just based on the environment? Based on mastery of the environment or harmony of the environment? What does that mean? Merkelisa or Semaj? Can you tell me?
Professor, what I understand from the environmental differences between the culture, it means, for example, it's my opinion, like in Korea, how they treat the elder people like this kind of stuff, and how in Uzbekistan this kind of relationship goes on. Is it about that?
It could relate to that. Again, all of these are just guesses and proposals to help you understand how people are different. I think the easiest way to understand is in Korea, for example, when they're going to make a new building or when they're going to make a new city, they'll just rip out the mountain, they'll rip out the dirt, they'll rip out the trees, make your building, and then they'll put the dirt back and maybe make a hill or a mountain, or make the tree come back and plant a tree around the building. That means they master the environment versus other people, which are more in harmony, means they will work around, they build their building around the environment. They don't cut down the tree, they don't bulldoze and change the mountain. Like they'll build a house on top of the mountain, not move the mountain. And they'll build a house beside the tree. And the extreme is when you're in harmony or you're subjugated to it, maybe the native Indians or the native Eskimos or Inuit, those people will build their home inside the tree, for example, or inside the snow. Does that make a sense?
Professor?
Yes.
I have a question about that.
Okay.
South Korea has a high density of people. Is it like, I think South Korea built a building in the middle of the mountain or middle of the forest. I think it's not because they are not like, they don't think the environment is important, but you know, we don't have enough land.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
I love your idea, and maybe you're true. I'm not saying I know the answer, but I do want you to think about, okay, well, when a new building or a new city is going to be built, what happens in Korea? They bulldoze everything, including they move the trees away, then they will build a house or an apartment, but then they bring the trees back. Whereas this is other countries, they just build the building right beside the tree. They don't touch the tree. The tree stays there because in Korea, at the end, you have an apartment and trees beside it. But they have moved the tree and then they move it back. So it's not really about you don't have space because the end result is the same, isn't it? You still have an apartment with trees around it. It's just other cultures, they will build the apartment without touching the tree. It still just stays there. Understand?
Yes.
It could be. I don't know. I'm telling you for sure there are many, many, many different cultures. Whatever you want to work with, whoever you want to communicate with, try to understand how they decide things, how they have their values, how they have their culture dimensions, and then you need to communicate matching their culture dimensions. So there's so many different people, so much different information. You have to group information together. You must make stereotypes. And I could say Korean people don't care about the environment, but that's kind of wrong because they have many parks around. They have many trees around. So it's not fair, it's not correct to say Koreans don't care about the environment, but maybe by saying they're mastering the environment versus they're not really exactly in harmony with the environment, or they're definitely not subjugated to the environment, it's different. So we need stereotypes to manage the information, but then we have to check, is the stereotype correct? So Japanese people, they might see English people as gentlemanly and polite. Americans might find them formal, proper, polite, intelligent. Maybe Irish people might see them as really bad and do a lot of swearing. Japanese people see the Irish people as cold, patient, and very religious. Interesting. I am a Canadian and I see it closer to the Americans. Americans see the Irish as drinkers. True. Jovial, happy. True. Hot-tempered? Yes, sometimes. Loud? Yeah, sometimes. So why do I agree with this? It's not because this is true and this is not true. It's because my culture is more American. If I lived in Japan and had more of a Japanese culture, I would probably think the same people, the Irish people, are more matching this. Understand? So it could be the same people, but how you see it depends on what you're focused on. Do we have a Mexican person, person from Mexico in our class?
Yes, it's me.
Okay. Is it okay if I identify Japanese people say you're mostly cheerful, passionate, and spicy food eaters? And the Americans say you're lazy, poor, loud, dirty, and uneducated. It's the same people. Do you have a comment? Would you describe yourself as more uneducated or more cheerful and passionate?
As cheerful, passionate, spicy food eaters, I think that's correct. And also loud. We tend to speak like almost screaming. So yeah, but like lazy, poor, dirty, and uneducated, no.
Okay. English, some people describe the people from England and maybe some people from the United States as gentlemanly or polite or formal, proper, polite, intelligent. How would you describe Donald Trump, that American?
Me? How would I describe him?
Sure. Be careful.
Oh.
I don't want you to get arrested. First of all, do you know the Korean law for communicating is different than the Mexican law? It's different than the American law. In Mexico or in United States, if you say something true about somebody, it's okay. Do you remember the defamation detail in Korea?
No, I don't.
There is a law that you have to protect harmony. You're not allowed to make any person look bad. You're not allowed to make any person lose their image or lose their face in public. If it's true or false, if you do something true, if you say something true, like talk about Donald Trump, and if you say something like that, like swear about him, he could attack you in Korea and you could go to jail for 7 years, even if it's true. So be careful. This is a funny test. How would you describe Donald Trump with the American culture?
No, I was just gonna say he's unrespectful.
Good, good. It's not really harming his image overall. You could argue that, but some Korean people say if you say I'm unrespectful, they could attack you. Do you realize that law of defamation that I just said in Korea, it's so strong that you must know it when you do business. But do you also understand who is most in the police station for defamation laws, for defamation problems? You would be surprised. They're middle school students. Seriously, it's little Johnny said little Susie is stupid. And so the parents of little Susie is trying to go to the police station to attack little Johnny's parents because she said, my daughter is bad. It's shocking. The most defamation cases are middle school students. Wow. Please make sure you're aware of those culture dimensions. We've already gone through and we've identified this. What is this show? I tried to show you guys this, or slowly coming up, this video. And that's just video number 1. Here is video number 2, talking about East-West cultural differences. Here's video number 3, talking about East-West, 3 countries details. So anybody remember what is this image talking about?
Yeah, they were showing different objects to different to people from different countries, Asian countries and European or the United States, I don't remember. And they had to choose what associations they would make with the first one, and then they should choose one of the 2 others. And we saw that Asians would choose rather the matter, like associate wooden objects with wooden objects, and Western people would associate the same shape together.
Good.
Was that
So
it? Yeah.
the Western people, it's from Canada, from USA, from England. They were saying it's the same shape, goes together. The color is not important. Versus in China, Japan, and Korea, they were saying the same material or the same blood. Do you guys realize in North America, they're saying if you're the same people, you're supposed to be considered the same. If you're the same shape or a human being, you're supposed to be the same. Versus in Korea and Japan, your blood makes a big difference. If you have the same blood as somebody, you belong in the same family. So in some countries, even if you're adopted, you still don't have the same blood, so you're not accepted. So adoption is very rare in some countries. That's one part of it. It's not good, it's not bad, it's just a different way of thinking. This idea is talking also about the environment. Some cultures think about the environment. The wind makes the balloon move. Other cultures think about the individual detail. The string is cut or there's a balloon problem, there's a balloon hole. This is talking about some cultures, they will think that the things that do things together match, versus other cultures, Western cultures, they think that whatever you are, whatever you're being, like two monkeys, they're both animals, they go together. It's not right, it's not wrong, it's just how some things go together. This one, the question is the man in the middle, is he happy or not? Some cultures only look at that individual detail and make an answer. Other cultures, they will think about the whole environment and then make a response. So it's not right, it's not wrong. My favorite is this. What does this say? Anybody want, Will Win or Ulugbeck? Can you talk about what we're looking at here?
We'll look at Pharaoh and in a meal with fish and something.
Yes, there's food, there's cereal boxes at the top, and fish and rice and vegetables and miso soup here at the bottom. Great. So what does this talk about? How does this relate to culture? Cultures are different. How does this reflect the culture? Anybody in class?
Can I go?
Sure.
Well, in Eastern culture, the meal is prepared by parents, and we went through this last class. In Western culture, kids and people, they prepare their own meal, so it's more convenient way. The cereal is convenient compared to the one that we see on the right side. I think that there's a difference in that.
Good. The whole idea of you are focused on how things are convenient is one culture versus the other description is different. So what I went through this research in the video, I identified Western parents are trying to encourage their children to be as independent and be able to take care of themselves as early as possible, learn to be independent, versus in the East, in Korea, Japan, China, the parents are trying to get them to memorize as much information, to learn as much facts and details. So the parents don't slow them down with the food. They don't slow them down with the washing and the clothes. The parents prepare all this stuff. So there's a different way to prepare children for the future. In East Asia, they're focused on learning just the most facts and details, versus in North America, they're focused on learning to be independent. Great. If we jump to week 2, this is talking about many different universal details. And of course, the education is really important. Let's get into this. Some of these details. I hope you guys have the textbook. The textbook that is talking about educational systems is really, really interesting, or the universal systems. The economic systems are different, educational systems are different, the social hierarchies are different, wealth inequality, all of these things. Let's take a look at this stuff. So let's start with the basics, just looking at isms, economic isms, socialism, communism, Nazism. Socialism, a joke is if you have 2 cows, you give 1 cow to your neighbor. Communism, you have 2 cows, you give both cows to the government, and the government may give you some milk. So all the way down to capitalism, you have 2 cows, you sell 1 cow and you buy a bull so you can get more. That's a fun, it's supposed to be a fun joke. Then you get into the economic system. The US is capitalistic, blah, blah, blah. United Kingdom also based on capitalism since the 1980s. Some sectors have been privatized. There's more details. Mexico, capitalistic. So far, they're all basically the same, but now they have social controls in Mexico. And then Canada, capitalistic also with social controls, but they have social education, social healthcare, social retirement. Start thinking about those things. The idea of education, formal education. There's formalized education. There's a lot of different details about informal education. Hopefully you guys have gone through these textbooks. The videos started to talk about it, but the idea of what is the education in United States. Let's start talking about that. I'm going to read some of these details. If you guys have this book, I'm reading again here from, I don't know if you can see it, Pearson, New International Edition. Intercultural Business Communication is the book I'm looking at. And chapter 2, it starts talking about the economic details. I'm going to, sorry, skip part of that. It generally says the pay for each country. And then if we get into political systems is one part. If you guys are interested, other than political systems, what about the world economics or educational systems? Canada, you want to hear about my country? It says in Canada, provinces are responsible for their educational system. However, all provinces provide free and compulsory education for kids between the age of 6 and 16. The literacy rate is 99%. Newfoundland primary secondary school is free, but operated by churches or religious groups. In Quebec, the government supports school boards and directs school curricula for Catholic and religious schools. Although government subsidizes university education, students pay some tuition. But what I thought was interesting, can you guys guess what % of Canada seeks university or training after high school? Juan Ki or Gwen, one of you is from Korea, one of you is from North America. Do you guys know what is the % of people that seek university in Canada?
I don't know, but I'm gonna guess 52%.
Good guess. What about you, Juan Ki? Higher or lower than 50%? Canadians trying to get a university education.
I'm not Korean, I'm a Chinese.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what would you guess?
I don't know, maybe 15 or something else.
Almost the exact same as Gwen. Actually, it says 40. Let's take a look at the culture of China to give you respect, Juan Ki. In China, although 100% of children are enrolled in the first grade, overall literacy rate in China is 92.2%. It's basically the same, 96% for male, 88% for female. Children attend schools differently than in Canada. How is there a big difference? In Canada, you only go to school Monday to Friday, and young kids, it's part of the day. In China, this book says you attend school 6 days a week. Students attend school for at least 12 years, and then they have to pay their tuition or sign a contract with a state company who will sponsor them. Juan Ki, any comments about that? Is this book true, or is this book completely wrong?
Professor, you just said that the students in China have to go to school for 6 days in a week.
That's what it says, correct.
Why? We still we have to go to school from Monday to Friday as well.
Only 5 days. Okay. Have you heard?
5 days.
Have you heard of when or where in China, because this was researched and the information was obtained from some parts of China. Maybe it was from a small town or a village outside of Beijing, Shanghai, or Hong Kong. It says in Hong Kong, it has a higher literacy rate, more than 94%, 97% for male, 90% for females. Education is very important for the success and the entrance to better schools. So almost everybody tries to go to university in Hong Kong. So it depends on where you are. Can you guess? Do you know of any communities where you have to go to school 6 days? For a hint. Go
6
ahead.
days. Maybe maybe in some in high school that the senior 3 students, because of their the heavy study, and they maybe in order to attend the top universities, they have to go to school for 6 days.
Right.
But,
So
maybe some parts of China, but mostly the students just 5 days. Yeah.
okay, in Korea also, there is the regular government school 5 days, but then usually on Saturdays, especially in high school, the kids also go to school. I know my children, even though I'm a Canadian father, my Korean mother and lots of the Korean family relatives in Korea, they were pushing my kids to go to school almost every day, even their birthday. I would take my kids on a family vacation that was amazing, a dream vacation, and the kids loved it, but at the same time, they felt guilty and sad all the time. And I would ask, why do you keep frowning? Why are you sad? And they felt guilty because they were missing school. I was like, what? It's a vacation. It's summertime. You're supposed to be having fun. But their friends in high school were still studying, so they felt guilty. Make sure. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I think we out of time here. Should we just wrap up the lecture?
Okay. Yeah, the lecture did finish a while ago. I just want to make sure you guys are aware there's many different ways that education is different, and even more important, many different ways cultures and people are different. So when you're talking about the cultures, no culture is connected to the communication styles. You must understand the culture in order to connect and communicate well with other people. Please go through chapter 2 of the textbook. There's many really, really interesting stories about how the cultures are different. Education stories here, and it's different in Japan, even the social stratification. So we're free with those details. There's tech differences and money differences, but it's all saying the same thing. Please make sure you understand that. Go through chapter 2, and more importantly, for next week, please make sure you're ready to present your introduction. The introduction is due week 3, and that is going to be looking at the specific focus of your research project. Have a good day, guys. If you guys have any other questions, or if you have more time, class is finished, but I can show you more examples of how cultures are different, like how Canada is different than Australia or China or France. Class is different. Anybody have any questions and you want me to show you how one country might be different than another? No, everybody's leaving? Any other questions related to class?
Nope.
Okay, thanks, guys. I see there's several people still here. Maria, are you still interested in seeing how one culture is different than another, or Minjin, or are you guys ready to leave?
So can I ask a question?
You sure can.
About if you look at the Excel file that you uploaded, the class material, I belong to group 9, and then beside there's a week 12, and there's a certain topic that was given to our group. That's kind of confusing because I thought about the project we have to come up with the topic, but there's a assigned topic. Is that a assigned topic?
You have not really focused on the directions. So If you look at the directions at the top of the screen, this is just talking about the weekly informal presentation is one thing, and that's saying that you have to talk during that week. But the group project is much bigger. Your group project, you can study anything you want. And so next week, you have to present your intro of your group project, which was worth 80% of your mark. But for
Also,
group 9, you should try to talk every week. Like this week,